Welcome to the Consciously Inspired Minds podcast, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to evoke their higher nature, our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds. We have a wonderful show in store for you today. I have an amazing guest on, Dana Giavis. And Dana and I met at our local yoga studio, and she and I are both yogis. We love going to a good hot power yoga class, and Dana's here to tell us a little bit about her journey and the nonprofit organization that she is affiliated with called Project Yoga, and it's amazing here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and nationally as well. So, Dana, hello. How are you? How's it going?
Hi, Brandy.
So good to see you outside of the studio when we're in like normal streetwear and not looking like we just stepped out of the shower from all the sweating we've been doing for the last 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I was so excited to have you on the show, Dana. I know we were talking a little bit before we kicked things off today, and you and I had an opportunity to connect at Hot Power Yoga, and I quickly realized that we had a connection in the way of our passion around yoga, our passion for spirituality, our passion for mindfulness. And I was really eager to get you on the show and share your experience and your journey with our listeners. So I just want to start off by letting the listeners know that Dana is incredibly just approachable. I just felt when I met you, I felt this connection and this beautiful energy. And I was just telling Dana before we got on the show today, I'm like, you're just one of those people who I can just walk up to and be like, hey girl, have you ever done a past life regression? Like, these are questions that you can just walk up to some random person and be like, hey, I just have these really inquisitive, curious questions for you. So, and I know that she's so open-minded and truly giving in the way that she connects with people around her. So Dana has been a Project Yoga teacher since 2019, and she currently teaches at the Corryville Catholic and Pleasant Hill Academy. And today Dana's going to share with us the impact of yoga and the movement of arts in her life and the joy that she gets from sharing the tools of mindfulness and yoga with the community. So, Dana, I'd first like to ask you, I like to get our listeners grounded in maybe some of your background. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing.
Okay. Well, I have lived here all my life. I went to Sycamore High School, or all Sycamore schools, actually, from elementary through, and have traveled quite a bit, but stayed in Cincinnati. Not too exciting. As far as we lived in a 2-story house off of Pfeiffer, and as far as childhood, I was a happy kid. I loved to be outside. I liked to be moving. Of course, let's go way back. We were outside playing until we were called in, and a lot of creeks, playing in parks. Good childhood memories. I have a brother and a sister. So as far as looking back, I kind of put down some notes, and it's amazing putting the dots together of everyone has ups and downs. There's things that happen in everyone's life. I mean, we're not that special. It brought up a lot of memories and things that happened in my life, and what actually made some shifts, major shifts and big learning. And you said that I'm open. That's a practice in itself, is to wake up every morning and I want to be as open and truthful to myself as possible. So here we go on different tracks.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I was reading in the bio that you had sent over that you had really a difficult time sort of learning in your chair. You had to be up and moving your body a lot. You were doing a lot of flips, cartwheels, gymnastics, track, swim, martial arts, all of these things that brought movement into your life that then gave you joy. And so tell us a little bit more about that, because it sounds like you're highly involved in extracurricular and moving the body and understanding that connection with the body, maybe when you weren't even really aware of it until you started to gain some more consciousness, awareness around how that was impacting your mindfulness. So tell me a little bit about that and how that started to ignite the journey that you're on today.
Back in elementary school, I loved gymnastics. I loved flipping. I can remember riding my bike to the middle school to take summer gymnastics and basically working on flips the entire summer. Back handsprings. And at that time, there really wasn't the sports, or maybe I would have gone further if there were trainers available. But during that time, there really wasn't. I was involved in gymnastics all through junior high and high school, some training in college, had a dance background, and then I was swimming at Montgomery Swim Club at the 8 and unders on swim team. And believe it or not, I rode my bike on Pfeiffer Road all the way down the hill to Montgomery Swim Club, which is now Tri-Health.
I know exactly where all those places are.
So sports were always part of my life. And I think I remember being in classrooms, and when I could tell time, as soon as I had a watch, it was like I was watching my watch. How long is this class? And I was one of those people that basically I learned through my body. So school was hard, and probably I would have had a nice label, but way back when. But I made it through. And then in high school, I was involved in track and swimming, gymnastics there, drill team, before that cheerleading. And I think I was painfully shy. Most people that knew me thought I was very outgoing, but I think that it was kind of like I was inventing this person, and we all want to belong. We all longing to belong to something. And that was my way in the world. It wasn't until some things started happening in my life that there were major shifts. And for females, I think that happens quite often, as far as we're on top of the world, and through junior high, those years are tough.
So hard.
Yeah. And by high school, it's like, where do I belong? And who am I?
Tell me a little bit about that. Resonates so deeply with me. Coming into junior high school was really tough for me. And I just remember being extremely emotional, trying to figure out where I did belong. And there were a lot of insecurities for me at that age as well. A lot of limiting beliefs were happening for me. And so I also wasn't involved in any sports. I had played soccer up until I had gone in a select soccer team up until junior high school. But after that, then it was like I just wanted to really hang out with my friends and do my own thing. And I didn't want to be committed to anything. And I really believe that, looking back now, it served me into who I've become today, and also how I'm raising my 2 daughters. But it didn't allow me an opportunity to feel a sense of community, which later in my life I yearned for. I yearned for a sense of community. And I always had friends. I was always had a good social life. But as far as feeling a good sense of community and camaraderie, that was really a void in my life, and something that I have focused on bringing to life as an adult. And that's really important to me. It's actually one of my values, is feeling that sense of community for myself and for my family. But take me through during those times. You have mentioned that you had suffered from anxiety, low self-esteem, an eating disorder, and now more currently the fibromyalgia. Take me a little bit through that time when that sort of that suffering, if you will, started to bubble up with your anxiety and the eating disorder. Where were you in that point in your life?
So, being involved in sports and gymnastics, I think by the time I was in high school, there was the weight was a priority and body issues. But what happened was back in, the end of junior high, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and they gave her about 6 weeks to live. At that time, there wasn't counseling, and my dad worked at GE and was very busy with traveling, working. He was in jet engines, and it was very typical of that time. My mother was a warrior, and she fought this tooth and nail. She went to all types of alternatives. She went to MD Anderson. She got involved in juicing, very alternative things for the 70s, actually. And she was in her early 40s at the time. And my siblings were older, so they were going off into their own directions. And I think that a lot of the guilt fell on me. And being the personality that I was, I didn't know how to handle it.
And what was that guilt? Where was the guilt coming from?
The guilt that my mother was ill. What do I do? I have no control over the situation. And what body issues I did have kind of morphed into what can I control? And I started controlling what I was consuming. That turned into a full-blown eating disorder, bulimic. So that was my secret. And there wasn't information about that either during those years. That was during high school. And I felt very alone, very ashamed. My parents were so busy. My mom's trying to survive. My dad's trying to make a living. And I was pretty much going unnoticed. And looking back on the eating disorder, it was a survival tactic. I survived that, and it became my best friend. And I know this sounds really weird. When you don't have control over your life, you start controlling things that you can control. And the emotions, the feelings, the guilt, everything that you're going through during those early years. And being a gymnast, I always was very conscious of my body. And if I had too much muscle, too much fat, same with the running, I can remember, oh, my thighs are getting too big, or constantly in my face. And maybe that was something that I created in my own brain, but it manifested into an eating disorder. And it stayed with me all through college. Those were some rough years. And it wasn't until after that I sought help. Mm-hmm. And I was so ashamed of that. I mean, that was the hardest thing to even tell my parents, which they had no idea. And even I can remember I had seizures in college, and it was because of electrolyte balance. Horrible things that I was doing to my body, and doctors didn't know, dentists didn't know. All these problems were happening, and it was just something that nobody talked about.
So all these red flags were really there that could have brought some awareness much earlier on, but it was something that was never discussed, which is not an abnormal thing. Even the generation that we're in now, when I think about my parents as well, we've come such a long way in normalizing certain experiences, life experiences, and ailments and behaviors. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that because we still have so much work to do in this space of balance, harmony, mindfulness, that sort of thing, because we live in such a fast-paced life. But to your point, yes, to begin a certain disorder at 13, 14 years old, and that continuing to progress through college, what was the moment that you recognized you needed help?
It was when I got out of college and I graduated with an art education degree. And I was at that time, you just keep loading it on your plate more and more and more and more and
Right.
more. So working at a restaurant and keeping in shape and partying with your friends. And it got to the point, where do I want to go with my life? And at that point, I was engaged or got engaged. And it was like, I do want to have a family. I want to be healthy. I want to live a normal life. I don't need this anymore. And I think that was it. My husband was very instrumental because he was the first person that said something is terribly wrong. And I think he was the first person that I really shared this with. And we have a lot of past history. His mother was ill during high school and died very young. My mother, who had the cancer and went through radical mastectomies and cancer treatments and everything, ended up living to the wonderful age of 80 years old. But she was a fighter. Oh my gosh.
Wow. It sounds like it.
Yes.
It sounds like it. Fantastic. Wow. So just going back to your mother's diagnosis, and I'm really curious around the alternative approach that she took in the 70s, because that certainly wasn't something top of mind for a lot of folks as much as it is today. Was holistic wellness, alternative methods, was that a pillar, a value in the house for you at that time? Or did your mom seek out alternative methods because she was diagnosed with cancer and thought, okay, what is it? I need to exhaust every.
Yeah. And thinking back on it, the medicine was what it was. And she went through the chemo and radiation, and this went on for years. She went to MD Anderson. She was going down to Lexington for treatments. I remember she brought in a juicer and she was trying to do different mind techniques as far as meditation, civil mind control, all these different things. A juicer was brought into the home. I mean, nobody was juicing back then.
Yeah.
She was getting laetrils from Mexico. She did everything possible. And it was really amazing. It was also very hard at the time because she was fighting for her life and I needed a parent. So not crying.
Understandable.
Just where I was. And as far as I had my own insecurities. So maybe if I had had a different relationship, which I try with my kids, I want to talk to them. I want them to talk to me. Mm-hmm. I want them to tell me what is going on in their lives. Mm-hmm. And I do have that relation. Love it.
Yes, that's the beauty in it. I have the same sentiment. I've got 2 daughters, 10 and 7, and I haven't realized until now what a gift it is when you think about your childhood and the things that you felt were missing, and then how you can pull that forward and make that such an important value for you to share with your children. It's almost like healing that inner child within ourselves because I'm giving them what I yearned for at that age. And not to say that I'm going to get it all right. There's going to be some trauma happening for sure and some things that are missed, certainly. And absolutely do not expect to get it right. But I'm doing my best. And it's really fulfilling, actually, and always a learning. Coming back to the low self-esteem, the eating disorder, and then you had also mentioned your fibromyalgia. When were you diagnosed with fibromyalgia?
Well, it was interesting. I went through an intensive treatment program for the eating disorder. And soon after that, I was married. We were at an age we knew what we wanted. We had 3 children, very close during that time, I had different jobs. I was teaching. And then after the kids were born, we opened a business together, my husband, and he was more involved in that. And I was doing the teaching, then had the kids, and then started working at a Montessori school so that I could take my children with me. And that worked out fairly well. And then there was a time with the business that our manager went his separate ways and I came on board full time.
And what was the business that you and your husband had?
It was a BP Dairy Queen, all under one roof. It was open 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And it was a ma and pa. We averaged about 20 employees during the year. So we were working constantly. And it started, and it's kind of funny. I'm looking back on it and did the eating disorder. Once I got over that with therapy and everything else, then I started having this pain and didn't know the cause, started going to doctors. And around that time, my sister was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So that was interesting. They sent me to a rheumatoid arthritis specialist. And then the doctors at that point in time, it was kind of a dumping ground. They said, well, we think it's fibromyalgia. So thus we start down the different drugs that could be used. And I'm taking care of kids. I'm working full time. And then I have this pain. And we're talking about a pain where you want to cut off your limb.
Wow.
That's the type of this pain. And nobody really had answers for it. And I believe there was a time where trial and error, we tried all these different drugs. Some made me so drowsy, some didn't. Also, when you're young, you don't get the right amount of sleep, like most Americans. We just don't allow ourselves to sleep and rest when we need to.
And we just don't understand the importance of that. It's the importance of sleep is so critical. And it's one of those things where it's so easy to get caught up in all the things we have to do, especially as we are building careers, raising a family, trying to maintain a healthy social life, trying to maintain any relationship in our life. And it all is happening so quickly around us until we get to that point of, wow, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm so fill in the blank. I'm so unbalanced, out of harmony, disconnected, etc. I'm really curious to know sort of where you were going in that moment, because I've had something very similar occur.
Okay, so there's these disease. Well, are they diseases? What is it? Is it the cortisol levels? Have we been living in this fight or flight, which is the buzzwords now, and the sympathetic and parasympathetic? This is where all this stuff started coming together, and I'm trying to understand it. Now that I'm older, it's like I love to look back on maybe a photo or something that I wrote down, and it was like, what was I thinking? I was so caught up in, were we even thinking back then? Or were we just going, just living life and burning the candle at both ends? So as far as, here we go again, we start trying to find out why we're feeling this way. And is there a cause, and what can I do? And after years of different medication and not feeling right, I started realizing, and because I had always been a mover, that, wow, maybe the blood flow through my body and being able to breathe. I started Cincinnati yoga, which was on Cornell. And the one thing I took away from it was breathing into your body and let the breath go through, and trying to work with the pain and working through it. And that was something that stuck with me.
So 2 questions. What brought you to Cincinnati yoga? What inspired you to try that? Also, was that the moment you started to have more body awareness and the mind-body connection?
Well, I think that I've always had body awareness, and I love different modalities of movement and dance. Probably I could express myself through movement easier than words.
Sure.
And so back to the body. What came first? Probably dance. So as far as taking a class at the yoga, I think I did a community class through Sycamore way back before that. So I had some knowledge, and Lilius was always there, different things and siblings talking about it. And so I think my husband and I just decided to take a class, and I kind of stuck with it over the years. So it's always been there during that time. And I got off on different things. It's just like, well, and this is my own type of personality. I get involved in something and then I want to research, and I go down that rabbit hole. And I started with jogging. Oh, this is great. I can go into my own little world, breathing techniques, meditation. It feels good. And then, of course, I got caught up into it. And then I started running. And then I was running competitively. And it was like, oh, well, maybe I'll try a marathon. And the marathon went into, well, maybe I can qualify for Boston. 10 years later, it's like, oh, I really beat up my body. My body wasn't meant for that. The yoga was always there and interwoven, and kind of went back to it. And I've always liked to push myself. It's fun to be a little competitive, but it has its place. Can definitely get swept up in that.
So coming back to the fibromyalgia, where are you with that currently? And how are you continuing to treat that?
After the years of the experimental drugs and just trying to figure out what worked best for me, and I think the breathing, and I started really diving into the yoga more and realizing I do have limitations. And as far as punishing the body, let's just enjoy it while it's here and while we can, and be pain free. And as far as, I don't even know if it really was fibromyalgia. I mean, it's a hard way. It's hard to diagnose it, but it was definitely nerve pain. I've had some surgery since then. And it's like, and then you kind of think back, it's like, well, did the eating disorder trigger this in my body?
Because they don't really know what causes the fibromyalgia. They say it potentially could be trauma to the body, or experiencing some kind of traumatic event, car accident, some sort of injury. Is that right? But they don't know for sure.
Right. And there wasn't anything specific at that time. Mm-hmm. Although trauma can kind of go into the body and hide itself and then reveal itself.
I also suffer from ulcerative colitis, which is a chronic inflammatory bowel disease where inflammation and ulcers kind of occur in the inner lining of the large intestine. And I was diagnosed with that in 2009. And wow. So what a journey that was. So I can really empathize with you when you're trying to find a solution for something that is so chronic and uncomfortable. And I didn't even know what it was for a while. You go through this process of, okay, is it my diet? What kind of medications should I be taking? What about my lifestyle? Where can I start assessing where I need to make some changes? Not to mention the stress of life in general can certainly add to any sort of chronic ailment. So a lot of that as well. It can be frustrating to be continuing to explore, okay, what is it that's sustainable for me to treat this chronic condition that I have that MDs don't know why it's even occurred or where it comes from. So how does it really manifesting in my body? I've tried alternative routes, modern medication, and 14 years later, here I am, and it can go into remission, and it does, but it doesn't mean that there aren't moments where I do have a flare, and here I am, whether it be if there's stress happening in my life, or it can be a multitude of things, really, but just being hyper aware of it. But I also know that moving my body and yoga certainly helps with my ulcerative colitis, amongst many other things. But tell me a little bit more about how you found breath work as a solution to the pain. How did you integrate that into your holistic wellness?
Well, it wasn't until I was doing the yoga practice, and there were other things I always involved in, like kickboxing and Zumba and just doing different exercise. And it wasn't until later on that it's my own research and my own interests. And I decided I wanted to learn more about yoga, and I did the teacher training. That was in 2019 that I did the teacher training. And since then, teacher training is not, as far as information, it just goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So I started learning more about the breath work, and yoga started out as breath work. And the movement came much later. And what we know as yoga, relatively in the last 100 years, it's Americanized yoga, as far as there's probably 400 different breathing techniques.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's just so interesting. And we have this nose that is a whole filtration system that does so many things. I mean, it's just amazing. The whole body is a miracle in itself. But when we do breathe, and this is where I go into project yoga, and with small children, it's like we work with taking a break. And one of the techniques is stop, which is a John Kabat-Zinn. Basically, stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, observe how you feel, and then proceed. And so teaching the kids at a very young age, I'm skipping all over the place. But as far as I felt with myself, I could calm myself down and my body and kind of take control of the pain of the fibromyalgia. And like you said, you have flare-ups, taking the time to nurture yourself when you do have a flare-up instead of constantly battling through, because that's what we're taught to do.
Right. Allowing the body to rest, allowing the mind to rest. Yes.
Yeah. My body's telling me something.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up. Here it is. And if we start to notice those small little signs that the body's telling us, and it was just like, boy, my body was screaming at me, but I fought through it. And I think a lot of people do that. There's all these mystery illnesses now, and it's a subtle way of the body telling us that, wow, you got to ease up on this, or maybe more of this, less of this.
And it's not always an easy answer either.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that you have to be patient with. I'm still on my journey to discovering what is right for me, what feels good and aligned for me in the way of health and wellness. Also, what I have capacity for in researching. For example, Ayurveda is something that I want to take a deeper dive into, and plant medicine. I currently have other things going on in my life that are taking a lot of my time and attention, and I'm certainly making priority. And health and wellness are certainly a pillar of high value for me, and I certainly make that a priority as well. But taking that deeper dive where you're being pulled in that level of interest and want to know more about what that means for you and how you might be able to integrate that into your life. So I'm really curious, Dana, also kind of taking a pivot here as we're on topic of health and wellness. I want to dive into spirituality. Again, you are very open-minded and open-hearted around being connected to self and what that means to you. And I've been to your home because I came over to practice. Was it Oh, remind me that the Tai Chi, was it that we did that evening at your home was Tai Chi?
No, it was Sundown.
Sundo. Okay. Okay. And you were so
Yes.
generous and so kind to invite me over to your home. And I walk in and I see all of these different statues, deities, and it's just blowing my mind because it's not like anything I had ever experienced before in a great way. And and like in a really great way. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So tell me a little bit more about your religious background or your spiritual background and what that symbolizes for you.
As far as upbringing, I was taught, and this was more from my dad, that there's so many religions out there, learn about all of them.
Mhm.
And basically, there's the same thread. So I did spend my youth at a Methodist church, and we had a youth group. It was a wonderful experience. That was all through high school, and good group of people. We went on retreats. It was more or less, well, I guess I was always taught to keep an open mind. And everyone has their beliefs.
So what do you believe in today? What is that belief system for you? What does that look like? Is that following any particular practice, or is it more eclectic in the way that you approach through kindness, joy, compassion, service? What does that religion/spirituality mean to you today?
You take what you need just by studying different religions, and there's certain things that I like here and there, and I take what I need. I think happiness is a choice, and I struggle just like everybody else. It's like, why is it that one day everything just works out, and then the next day it's, why am I here? So it's that balance. And I think, that's one thing with the yoga. It's like always coming back to the mat, and you don't have control of the world out there, but you have control of your mat, your balance. You take what you need, leave the rest behind.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much information, so much out there that we really have to know our boundaries. So I don't think I really answered your question about religion, spirituality. I'm a very spiritual person. I love to connect with nature. I like to feel like the whole thing of belonging, longing to belong. We need to feel that way. So you look for your tribe.
And I have a similar opinion on that, which is I wasn't brought up in any particular religion, although, I can say I came from a Catholic family, but it's not something that we truly practice. Early on in my childhood, kind of that Easter, Christmas family. But from there, it was not something that I spent any time in. So as I probably 4 years ago really started to explore my spirituality, through that feeling this interconnectedness, this oneness, this support outside of something bigger than myself, and feeling so held and connected in a way I never had before in my life. I wonder how I made it this far without it. Kind of to your point earlier when you said, were we even thinking? Like, what were we doing? Were we just kind of going through the motions and just sort of in this survival mode? So we could talk a whole lot about that. But now that I have tapped into this world of spirituality and what that means for me, and I very much take what I need and leave what I don't, but I'm so interested to learn about all different religions and how they are interconnected. Because at the end of the day, we're all after the same thing. We're after the joy, we're after the peace, we're after the harmony and the love and the connection. This brings me into my question around joy for you, Dana. Outside of nature, where do you find the most joy?
Friends, family, connection. As far as joy, I think a good little experiment, or not experiment, but I don't even know what you would call it. As far as I can remember being like during the time of the eating disorder or the fibromyalgia or times in my life where it was like, could I just go back to the simple times where I was that kid? And sometimes you have to get a picture of yourself, and it's like you look into the eyes of you, that child and that person, and that the joy from that photograph. Bring yourself, your younger self with you all the time. Sometimes I pull out that photo and it's like, I was that happy kid. And where did that go? Where did that go? Let me go back to that time. Let me find that joy. And I think a lot of people after retirement, they say, I'm afraid to retire because I won't know what to do. I love my job. You have to open up and find the time to investigate some of those different things that what really pulls at your heartstrings. And I love children because of their beauty and their innocence and just the curiosity. And that's joy in just watching it. And that kind of led me to where I am now. I didn't want another job. I want to work with kids, give them some of the tools that they can work through those years where we are just motors and we're just churning. They're important years for sure, but it's not until later. And I have so many friends that are entering retirement now. And it's like, I'm really afraid. I don't have any hobbies. And it was like, well, what did you like to do when you were a kid? And it's like, oh, I used to love to be in the water and splash. And my happy place is to go out into nature, take my dog, go down to the Little Miami River and look at the beautiful treasure, the rocks, the driftwood. And I love to put these things together. That is my medicine. That is my joy. And as far as the generation coming up, they've got so much more. I'm just like, this is going to be so hard.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I want to make sure that we get into, of course, obviously Project Yoga and the impact that you're making there. And I have so much curiosity around what it is you're experiencing with these kids within the program. So Project Yoga is a nonprofit that gives underserved communities a chance to experience the emotional and physical well-being that can result from practices of yoga and mindfulness. And I know that you can explain much more cohesively around what the impact and the mission of Project Yoga is. But I first want to mention the values. When I was having a closer look into Project Yoga, their values are so stellar. And that of mindfulness, of compassion, of equity and empowerment and partnership. So important to the development of these young kids, especially in these communities that are less privileged and underdeveloped, and continuing to be in this survival mindset and teaching these young kids how to really respond versus react. So tell me a little bit about Project Yoga and your involvement there and the impact that Project Yoga is having in the world.
I think I mentioned that when I finished my teacher training and I worked the job, didn't want a job. I want to give back, basically. So I was looking for the right fit and found some people that were working for Project Yoga. And I liked everything that you just mentioned, what they're all about. So started in, and I have had experience with kids, teaching kids. And so mostly they have different programs. They go into Bethany House, they go into Cincinnati public schools, all sorts of different, they were working with Xavier and UC at one point in time, and the police department, and teaching these basic skills, which should be taught at a very young age. And I know I didn't have these tools as far as identifying how I feel and what I need.
Tell me about these basic tools. What specifically are those?
The breathing techniques and being responsible for your body and just knowing and how do you want to present yourself in this world. Some of with the very small children, we work with mindfulness and breathing techniques, some movement, balance. We make it fun. And as the kids get older and more directed to the curriculum and where they're at, like as of right now, I'm working with a group of high school kids that are alternative. It's an alternative ed program through Hughes High School, and they get credit by working at the zoo. And these kids are just phenomenal. I am just, what a gift to be able to work with these kids. And it was like, I only have 6 weeks, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to give them little tidbits of over all my years experience. What's the most important for them?
Yeah.
And basically to slow down, and life works itself out. No matter what, we are born and we die. It's that space in between.
So tell me, what do you think these kids are yearning for most right now? Like, what do you think their deepest desires are? What do they need? And it could even be some of those core basic needs too.
Yeah, sure. It kind of depends. When I look at the younger kids, they've missed out on a couple of years with the COVID as far as where they're at and curriculum and everything else. And as far as being able to regulate their bodies, we lost a couple years. And as far as these older kids that I'm working with are very focused, and they want to learn more, and they want to know more about the breathing techniques and how they can feel better. I think about the world itself and how to deal with things that come up.
Do they talk to you about their challenges and their fears?
We only have this limited time, and a lot of times we don't get to out. I'm always curious, like for people, you and I, what led you to this direction of yoga, or how did you get here? What is your story? And we all have stories and all these different things that happen in our lives that bring us to this one place. And everything's changing day by day.
So after one of these sessions with the kids, and how long are they? Are they 30 minutes, an hour? How much time are you spending with them at a time?
Yeah, it depends on the age. And for the very young children, it could be in a classroom setting. Middle school could be a larger group. And it's usually the younger kids, 20 minutes to a half an hour, up to 45 minutes. Very rarely is it an hour, unless it's with like a shelter or adults.
Sure. So what are you seeing as an output of these sessions with these kids as you see them come onto their mats? What are they experiencing before they start these breathing techniques and the yoga? And then what are you seeing as an output of spending time with these kids on their mats? Emotionally, physically.
Right. They could come in and they could be just totally bouncing off the walls. And we could do some centering and some breathing together. What a way to connect is breathing with someone. If you really want to get to know someone, sit down and breathe with them.
How would you recommend doing that? That was going to be my next question, was if folks wanted to learn more about breathing techniques, either for themselves or for breathing techniques and opportunities to do with their children, where would they go? Where would they find more information on that? Or what would you even recommend?
Well, in the next couple of years, I think that we're going to just see so much information out there. I mean, it's huge, and people should be taught how to breathe. And it's like, well, we breathe automatically, but we're humans and we can control the way that we breathe for different outcomes. Our magical breath, and breathing makes it better. There's so many books at the library. There are so many apps, breathing apps that you can follow along. and just being aware of the breath and coming back to the breath. You can have the kids that are just fidgety, and we shake some of that off, sometimes some of that energy. We work out through the body, but then we always return to the breath and learning to feel it into the rhythm of the breath and where it's going. And usually after a session, how do you feel? Well, I do feel calm. Yes, I have soothed myself. And it's really cool. And so then with the older kids, it's like, as far as anxiety goes, and I think most of our young kids suffer from anxiety, so much depression, and start learning more about yourself. And the best way is to start with the breath. So as far as information, there's podcasts, there are YouTube videos. There's just so much information. If you are an athlete and you want to perform better, learn how to breathe. Just, there's so much information out there. And it is so basic.
Is there one technique of breathing that you like best, that works best for you?
Well, I think the easiest is just to breathe, the breathing and counting your breaths. And the longer you exhale, the more your body relaxes and goes into a relaxation. So if you were to breathe in 4, breathe out 6, and there's so many different techniques. I mean, some of these apps on your phone, you actually follow a circle, breathe in and breathe out. And where are you breathing? Are you breathing shallow breaths?
Right.
Are you breathing through the nose? We should be breathing through our nose. Have this wonderful filtration system. And then are you breathing shallow breaths? Can you bring it down to the belly and have the diaphragm actually working those lungs and getting the oxygen to different parts of your body?
That's something that I didn't realize about myself up until just a couple of years ago, was how shallow my breathing was. And how to make it more impactful is feet on the ground, feet on the floor, hands resting gently on the lap or whatever feels comfortable for you. And as you breathe in, like really breathing into the belly, allowing the belly to expand. I know all my ladies out there who want to keep that tight belly and you just want to shallow breathe. Just let it go, girl. You got to breathe in deeply through the belly and then exhale out the mouth or through the nose. But that box breathing, sort of that in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, rest for 4, potentially setting breathing alarms for yourself during the day. This is something that I did in the beginning for myself as well. Now I don't need the reminder. I just feel it in my body and know when I need to take a break and take a breath. But setting those breathing alarms throughout the day, whatever that may look like for you, is maybe 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then the evening. It's just taking a pause and taking a breath and calming down that nervous system. Super helpful. And doesn't take much time at all.
Right. And just like yoga is a practice, breathing, you have little reminders. Oh, how is my posture? Am I sitting up straight? Am I allowing the air oxygen to go to the different parts of your body? Or am I slumped over? Being aware of those things. Am I breathing through my nose? And I would constantly say this with the kids. And where's your tongue?
Yes.
And I've heard of setting the alarm, but we are not meant to sit. So some people have to set alarms. Like, I've been at the desk for 30 minutes. I need to get up and move. And we're doing that more.
Movement is so important. I mean, for anybody out there who might be looking for, because I used to be someone who I would run. I would get on the elliptical. I would take kickboxing classes. When I was introduced to yoga, it is still so powerful, but there's something less, I'm trying to find the right word here, less aggressive about it, I suppose, or less, gosh, I'm going to have to figure out a way here to articulate this, but it's I felt like for me, it's more of a feminine approach for me. I guess that's the first word that comes to mind. It's less masculine, more of a feminine approach. Not to say that yoga is more for female than it is male, but I suppose I consider myself kind of my old self and my new self the last couple, 4 years. And I would say that my old self was living a lot in my masculine energy. And now I have a better balance of my masculine and my feminine. And I have found yoga to embrace that for me. So I guess maybe that's a better way of putting it, is that it's a better balance for me of tapping into my masculine as well as my feminine. And that's just my personal experience. Yoga has been such a gift to me. And now it's so life giving. It's such a life force for me that it allows me an opportunity to manage my stress, to get my energy flowing, the prana, the chi, whatever it is you want to call it. But to kind of anytime I'm feeling a little sticky, a little tense, a little agitated, frustrated, whatever, taking an hour yoga class is so powerful and releases so much of that tension. It's almost, I tell my husband, I'm like, I'm going to come back a new woman. Just 1 hour, I'm going to come back a new woman. So it's such a beautiful practice. And I'm so grateful for it.
I think you're right. There's different times in your life where if you're running competitively or you're doing that Zumba class and you need to get the energy out. As far as the yoga, and there are some very, very hard Ashtanga and the hot tower yoga. For myself, it's more of a spiritual.
Oh, 100%.
I'm more into feeling the movement. Where is the energy going? Where is the breath going? Along with a beautiful combination, body, mind, spirit. And with the kids, we call it the 3 Bs: brain, body, breath.
Oh, I love that.
And ultimately balance.
And I think that's why I use the example of feeling more into my feminine there, is just being more in touch with my feeling and the emotion of it and the presence of it. And when I'm in a yoga class, I'm not thinking about anything else. And it gives me a moment of pause in the beginning of the class. And then it gives me the power that I'm yearning for as well in the hot power yoga. But then Shavasana at the end gives me an opportunity to get quiet also. So it really gives me that chance to be present and connect with my body. And what you learn is how to better connect with your body and listen to what it's telling you. Because there are days in yoga where I feel extremely expansive and my practice is a lot more expansive and fluid. Whereas other days I'm feeling a little bit tighter in my body and I'm feeling a bit more limited in what I can do, but that doesn't matter. Like I really give myself grace and I set an intention at the beginning of class and tell myself I'm going to give my body what it needs today and I'm going to listen to that. And so it's not just a workout for me. And I think that's another piece of it. Whereas before it was, okay, I need to work out. I need to burn some calories. I need to stay in shape. Whereas with yoga, I'm getting all of it. To your point, that mind, body, spirit experience. And that ties back to being more into my feminine. And so, well, Dina, it has been such a pleasure having you on today. I just want to close with, what does it mean to you to live a consciously inspired life?
When I get up every morning, I try to do the best that I possibly can, be the best person that I can. And happiness is a choice. That's right. And we don't have to be happy. And just like in yoga, the one thing, it's like, you are where you are, just start there. You don't have to prove anything, be anything, just start where you are.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Meeting yourself where you are. What kind of impact do you want to have in the world?
My expectations have come down. I think at one point in time, it's like, I really need to do something fantastic. And it's like, there's this lifespan that we have, birth and death, and we're here to enjoy. I mean, there'll always be bumps in the road. We're here to help one another through those bumps, that what we call life. So whatever I can do, it could be something as small. We have these huge expectations and it's like, sometimes we have to remove all that. It's that little ripple effect that maybe one student picked up one thing that, oh, let's just pause for a minute. That's enough. That's enough. Then that one child, one little piece.
One little piece of the positive impact. Yes. I loved this, and I have to share this with the listeners as we close out today. But this poem of loving kindness that's posted on the projectyoga.org website, which I encourage everybody to visit, projectyoga.org, to learn more. So this poem that Project Yoga has posted is, may we be peaceful and at ease. May our hearts remain open. May we awaken to the light of our own true nature. May we be healed. May we be a source of healing for all beings. And I thought that was just so beautifully, succinctly said. Especially, may we be a source of healing for all beings. Dana, thanks for being on today. It was such a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in the next hot yoga class. You're always an inspiration. So strong, so powerful, so mindful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. All right, everybody. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's all for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyinspiredminds.com. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.